multi-stakeholder analysis and what all the other academicians, NGOs and other international organizations have to say with regards to GCM implementation. And the moderator for this session is Dr. Meera Sethi, who is the former DG's Special Envoy to IMO India. Dr. Sethi brings over 30 years of international, regional, and national level experience in Africa, Europe, Middle East, and South Asia with a track record in leading humanitarian development and migration management programs. Retired as the Director General's Special Envoy to India after 22 years of service with the UN IOM, she has previously served as the head of the International Partnership Department, Geneva, as IOM Chief of Mission in Turkey and Ethiopia, and Senior Regional Advisor to Sub-Saharan Africa, and later South Asia, covering SAARC countries. During her tenure with IOM, she was instrumental in negotiating important bilateral and regional agreements, partnerships in SSA and South Asia, as well as with the African, Caribbean, Pacific, the European Union, least developed countries, Commonwealth, Secretariat, OECD, and civil society. Prior to IOM, Dr. Sethi worked with the UN Economic Commission for Africa and the ILO. Post-retirement, she has been engaged as a senior consultant in international migration with the ICMPD EU, ILO, UN, IOM missions in India and Dublin, and been invited as a keynote speaker panelist in many academic, civil society, and governmental forums. I welcome you, ma'am. The speakers for this session are, with us we have Professor Irdaya Rajan, Chairman of IIMAD. May I please welcome sir on stage? Next, we have Professor Binod Khadria, sir, who is the president of GRFDT, who will be joining us virtually. We have with us Professor Ram Babu Bhagat, who is the head of the Department of Migration and Urban Studies from IIPS, Mumbai. I welcome you, sir. We have with us Dr. Neha Wadhwan, the National Project Coordinator from ILO. I welcome you, ma'am. We have with us Dr. Anjali Borhare, who is the founder president of Disha Foundation. I welcome you, ma'am. And lastly with us, we have Shri Amit Chaudhary, who is the National Project Officer of IOM India. May I welcome all the speakers on stage and hand over the dais to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have quite a limited time, just 1 hour and maybe 10 more minutes. We're already 6 past 3, and this room has to be given up, and there are some representatives who are traveling. And as you can see, after a nice lunch, the room is empty right now. But I think what's been very fascinating today and is been listening to what the policies and strategies that have been put in place by the government and specialized agencies, and then listening to the states and seeing how they are implementing these strategies and what the challenges and opportunities there are, what needs to be done, and that has come up very clearly. And I think what was refreshing was to hear and to see the openness of the debate. Not only was it rich, was it factual, it was extremely open. There are many issues that we encounter regularly working in the migration field. Unfortunately, we are not able to bring them up and table them as openly as today in several meetings. And so many things have to be swept under the carpet. We are all aware of irregular migration, the problem of lack of data. We're also aware of the fake passports and fake visas. And we also know that there's lack of information at several levels. It's not only amongst migrants, but it's also at the state level. Talking better to each other and having the data talk to each other, which one of our representatives said, was also very important. So speaking in the words of what the Secretary said, India's approach of care, connect, celebrate, and contribute. So with that, I call my first speaker, and I'm not going to introduce anybody. I think everybody is well known. But what I would like each speaker, we are giving you 5 minutes plus 2 minutes extra as bonus, and we would like to hear a little bit more about the future of migration. What do you see, having listened to the opportunities and the challenges by various stakeholders? What do you see as the way forward? And as it was pointed out in our morning session today, what can India do more to even go further? We're already holding the migration process, as the Secretary said this morning. How can we take it and make it stronger and more cooperation amongst partners, and I have to say at the interstate level, which I'm very glad our representative from Punjab said that, because that is also very important. We need to hear more of that too. So over to you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Meera. So, as we already heard that the attendance is only 20% now, I think. And we are going to speak to people whom we know mostly, except few. And they know what we are going to speak also. So we will limit to we will limit to 5 to 7. That's why we suggested not even 10 minutes. 5 minutes are okay. But I just wanted to start, thanking ICM, especially Dr. Surabhi is initiating this particular meeting. I think this is a very, occasion to, to celebrate this meeting. I think thanks to Surabhi organizing this meeting. Now, I just wanted to, because I am one person always talk about evidence-based policy. Without evidence, you can do any policies, is okay. You may succeed, you may not succeed, but I am more on the evidence-based. So I would like to spend on this CGM on particular objectives. Before that, let me start with Dr. Syed, Secretary OAS, said very correctly that India currently has 32 million people as per the statistics. I don't know what statistics is, I don't know anyway. I will question the statistics. And 14 million are diasporas, 14 million are workers still holding Indian passport, 18 million are diaspora, so total 32 million, and 9 million are in the Gulf. And India is number one in migrants. I think India is number one in everything anyway. Migrants, all categories, and number one in remittances. I think these two we are number one, at least data-wise by World Bank, UNDP, everybody talks about that. So in that context, I would like to pick up only one objective, because I'm going to leave, because there are a lot of objectives in the CGM. Let my all speakers speak about other objectives. I'll speak for only one objective, which is the first one. I am the first speaker, so I'll speak about first and the first objective. It says very clearly, collect, utilize, accurate, disaggregated data as a basis for evidence-based policy. This is the first objective of CGM. What India and what states have done for collecting, what they utilized. Of course, you have to collect to utilize anyway. And then if you collect data, are you getting disaggregated? For example, we had Vande Bharat flight, so many people came. We know how many men and women came, how many accommodated, like we have one number. We're all talking about one number, 87 billion. It's sent by whom? Men or women, young or undocumented migrants, So we are still on the one number. So we need, and then that CGM talks about 5, 6 important, then improve migration data. I think India is doing something on that. Establish and strengthen regional centers for research and training on migration. I think they are trying to do a little bit on that. And conduct household surveys on migration. This is also part of the CGM thing. Now, if you look at that, how much India and the states have invested to collect data? I think this is the first question I would like to ask all the stakeholders. How much, for example, IOM, did you put some money to collect data, or only you want to ride on somebody's thing, give me that data, give me that data, what ILO is doing, what everybody is doing, you want data, did you invest? Did you invest any money in any budget? Tomorrow the Indian government says we are budgeting 100 crores to collect data on migration. We say we have given money to ration rice, we given money to this, that. Did you invest that thing? That is the first question I would like to ask all the stakeholders. International, individual, everybody want data. give me data. But somebody has to put the money. You want the food in the lunch, somebody has to cook. I think who is going to fund the data? Because the elections are funded. Diaspora can fund even villages. But why you are not asking even diaspora to fund migration research, migration data collection? This is something very important. I want to raise one point for people to discuss. Then I want to put that at the background of the Vande Bharat flight mission, which is the biggest mission. We all accept that. I just wanted to put one point. Now, Indian government said there were around 14 million Indians are abroad, 9 million are in the Gulf. As per the statement by the Dr. S. Jaishankar, Honorable Minister of External Affairs, on March 15, 2021, he said, through Vande Bharat mission, we brought 4.6 million Indians from 98 countries. This is his big, long statement. I pick up only one sentence from his statement. That means 2/3 of Indians who came back with our data. We had 14 million, 2/3 have come back. What happened to them? Are we back to 14 million now? Or we lost all of them, these 4 million people? How many were regular return migrant? Return migrants is a part of the phenomena. Kerala has 1.1 million. Return migrant pre-COVID. Everybody goes to Gulf, you come back. Not if you go to Canada, you don't come back. That's why Punjab people want to go to Canada. Very simple thing. You don't want to come back to India. Go. But return migrants is a part of the migration life cycle. So people will come. How many are returned, normal return, and people distressedly returned? Do you know the data on the distress return? We don't know. Return, normal return, distress return, and there is a group I created in recently after a survey in Kerala, return to remigrate. They are not returned. They will go. They have come from Saudi, they will go to Qatar. They come from Canada, they will go to America. So I think we have to look at that thing. And that means 1/3 has come back as per the data by the government of India. Now, if they have not gone back, how many have gone? We don't know. I think that is very, very important. We don't know how many have gone. So our stock is being now questioned. Are we having the right stock now? 14 million, some people have gone? We don't know. I think this is something we have to work out, that how many went back. If all the 4 million have not gone, your size is only 10 million now, not 14, what you said in the earlier reports, in the annual report of the MOEA, all the things. So we have to look at that. I think this is very, very important. You are taking only one-way traffic. People came. Because that's also never in the history of Indian government or the Kerala state government. We never produced return migration data. COVID came and taught us to collect data on return migration. So the crisis. Otherwise, I don't think any time any minister has given a data in the parliament or assembly saying that these many people we brought in. We brought. It's like a big achievement because you had data. Everybody was quarantined. Otherwise, they would have left without knowledge because you have put them some 14 days and that is why you collected data. Otherwise, no. This is one point. Second point, Kerala finance minister proudly announced in the budget last year. Out of 2.1 million Keralite, we brought 1.4 million. I said 2/3 have come back. How many have gone? Neither he knows nor nobody knows. And this is a state we talk too much about migration. This is Kerala. 2/3 have returned. How many went back? We don't know. India 1/3 have returned with holding Indian passport. I think this is the system. So we are, even crisis period is not teaching us to learn, to invest on migration. I think this is a very, very, very sad story we are talking about, because normal you should collect, but even crisis period we are not able to collect. And I want to close the last point, that's the last point, because that's also again on data. You know, January of this year, I went to the MEA website. How many Indians are in abroad? I got a data. Every country, they add 32 million. I was looking at how many people were in Russia at the time. There was a number. I don't want to tell the number. The number is changed now. Then I went to Ukraine. How many were there? I know people were there in Ukraine. 6,494 people were there in Ukraine in January 2022 as per the MEA data now. And then March 15, our Honorable External Affairs Minister said, we brought 22,000 people by Operation Ganga. Only 6,000 were there. Where were these fellows? 200% wrong. This is the data we are talking about. India, maybe 50 million, 60 million Indians may be abroad. We are only talking about 32. If you use the same error of 200%, 32 plus 32 plus 32, we are having 1 billion Indians or anywhere in the world. So I think we have to be, we are now talking, in fact it is not even estimates, it is unfortunately guesstimates. Estimates you can little bit trust, in the budget will give you quick estimates, the finance minister quick estimate, but this is, basically we are talking about estimates. I'm going to stop that. So we have to think seriously on collecting data, and the future. COVID, nobody has seen. COVID is present in 180 countries. COVID can go without passport, without visa. Indians can go to all countries. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was perfect. And I think along with your recommendation, I think what is also important is, which is coming up in several of the reports that are being presented to IMRF, is that we need more documentary evidence, not on remittances and contribution of diaspora, but of migrant workers. We're not finding enough studies on that, and along with data, this is what is also lacking, is more evidence. So with that note, I call on our next speaker, who will be with us online, Professor Binod Khadria, also known quite well to everybody, who's currently the president of the Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism. So over to you, sir.
Okay, Meera, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, thank you very much.
5 plus 2. Your time is 5 minutes,
yes.
plus 2 minutes bonus.
Plus 2 minutes, yes. Certainly, stop me when I cross that. Well, I'm very glad to be here, and particularly to be listening to this morning all the speakers. And I must thank Surabhi for arranging this national consultation. Now, Meera, you have referred to the document that IMRF is going to handle, or IMRF has been distributing. So I am not going to speak about any one of the 23 objectives or how India is doing and how India should be doing. But I am going to speak about how Surabhi and her organization, ICTM, and how the Ministry of External Affairs is going to take part in this IMRF. What should be India's strategy? That I think is absolutely central and crucial to today's consultation. We have got a lot of material today, a lot of resources today for the purpose of creating or equipping what we have been asked to do in terms of preparing a voluntary national review report. That, I think, purpose has been well served by today's presentation, by different ministries, by different states and other speakers. That, I think, is well settled. And that's where we have projected good practices. Good practices by various ministries, states, and we are asked by non-government stakeholders. I think we are in that category, non-governmental stakeholders. What have we done in terms of good practices? I think we are basically academia, and we have given certificate courses and other kinds of courses to equip our students or participants who come from different walks of life, and some of them are also from the government, not only of India, but of other countries also. So at GRFDT, we conducted 2 6-month certificate courses in collaboration with other organizations, including the organization of IMAD that my friend Irudaya Rajan belongs to, and then there are other ones which, this was on GCM objectives, and the other one was on migration governance and diaspora engagement. And then I see Ram Bhagat in this list of speakers here today present, and he has been running a Salam project. So I think there is something to report in terms of good practices by the academia as a stakeholder. That needs to be taken into account. Now, the approach that has been mentioned, highlighted by the IMRF or the UN government, UN network on migration is the whole of government and the whole of society. That's where it's problematic for India. I think today we heard many of the speakers from different ministries saying, this is my role is limited up to this. And then, this is not whole of government. You have to cross that bridge. You have to go to the other department and say, own up that responsibility as a whole of government. I think that's where India needs to equip itself. And before going into next 10 days, we are only left with 10 days to go to the IMRF, and that's where I think we need to do our homework. I will urge the Ministry of External Affairs to reach out to other ministries in that capacity, in that kind of, with that kind of approach. And then whole of society, where are the civil society organizations? You know, are they shaking hands with the government? No. It's very, kind of very thin overlap that we have. So that's where I think we need to. And then we have to, the documents that you mentioned, what are these documents? The UN Secretary General's report. That is the first document that all our ministries, all our speakers who spoke today, I suspect that any of them have read this. There was no reflection, not even iota of a reference to that document. The second most important document is the progress document that has gone through 4 revisions. And how many people have written that? That the UN members from the member states, Bangladesh and Luxembourg, they have conducted these through 4 roundtables, and 150 participants have actually written that document. Has that been circulated? I think ICM better do it in the next 10 days. Otherwise, we'll be speaking something completely different language at the IMRF than when our representatives speak there. So that's very, very important. Now, when we think about this, I think we need to also take into account. I'm glad that in the earlier session, very cautious argument was placed. What about India? Is Indian government promoting migration? I think it does, de facto, even if not de jure, because all the presentations that we're talking about, whether skill formation or that formation or visa issue or this issue, was all for facilitating India's highly skilled or low skilled people to migrate out. That's only half of the story. Where is India as a destination country? Nobody even spoke about it. Why ICM did not invite the Home Ministry? The Ministry of Home Affairs should have been here, part of it. And that's where India's immigration policy is central to that we have not even referred to that. We are only talking about immigration, and our immigration policy is still in the making. So that's where we may be wanting, we may be completely going blank on half of the turf that is there. Because India is not only an immigration country, but also an immigration country. Many countries have transited from being immigration country to immigration. Look at China, for example. It's a destination country today. But if we give away in the name of demographic dividend, if we just say that we are going to export our human capital, one day we may regret that. We will be left with people who are, yes, half a minute. We will just be regretting that, when our plumbers and our, masons, etc., will not be left to serve this country. This morning, look, we are IT leaders of this country, and we had a glitch. The audio was not working of this national consultation. That's what happened.
I have to ask you to stop now.
If
Yes.
our best people are going to leave this country, then I think we will certainly in the long run be not serving the cause of this country, and that I think is going to be extremely important. So we have to put our eggs in different baskets of immediate run. All those things that have been said today needs to be done because of the immediate run. For the short run, but in the long run, perhaps our policies will have to be different, and that needs to be said. And because India needs to take leadership in IMRF, not sit as a backbencher and raise hands to what other people are saying. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, and I hope ICM has taken note of all the points. But I do have to say, one issue here, that it's not only India, it's most of the states, they pick and choose the areas that they would like to prioritize. And this is a dilemma we constantly face as academics, as practitioners in the field. But we definitely have to admit that we are making progress. We are bringing on the table many issues that 10 years ago were not even being discussed at the governmental level forums. So with that note, I call on our next speaker, who's sitting right next to me and who has a flight to catch, Professor Bhagat, who's also well known to all of you. So, sir,
Thank you.
5 + 2.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. And I'm very thankful to ICM, Dr. Survi, for inviting me. And I will begin by saying that this GCM, Global Compact for Migration, is very much aligned with Sustainable Development Goal. So that makes it a departure from our earlier understanding that migration to be controlled, migration to be managed. From that, there is a deviation from that, and now the issue is that how to integrate migration with development. So we have to remember this context of sustainable development. Second is that we have so many terms like diaspora, NRI, migration, migrant. Sometimes we are using as synonymous. I think from policy point of view, we need to make distinction among all of them. So diaspora, I think, very important, and engaging diaspora in India's development, or even engaging diaspora in protection of migrants' right, that is also very, very important. But then the vulnerability of migrant and the strength of diaspora, that need to be, I think, one need to remember when we are trying to leverage in protection of migrants' right and taking the advantage of the diaspora. Secondly, when we use NRI, again, I think it's used synonym with diaspora or migrants. So NRI, if I say that non-resident Indian American, non-resident Indian American is not the same like non-resident Indian. When I say non-resident Indian means he is the citizen of India, he is holding the passport of India. So I think this diaspora and migration issue need to be very clear in formulating policies in regard to with GCM and protection of the migrants' right, because many of them are vulnerable. Another important thing that we don't make distinction between migration and migrants. We always talk about migration. So migration should be safe, regular, and orderly. Fine. Migration and migrants seem to be the same. Migration is an act, migrant is a person. But then there can be a lot of implication from the point of view of policy. When I say migration policy, I always refute we cannot have a migration policy when India's constitution says, particularly for internal migration, when India's constitution, Article 19 says the right to move is a permanent, fundamental right of the Indian citizen. So this is non-negotiable. But what is needed for a policy is a policy for migrants. Always we should have a policy for migrants. Secondly, when we talk about regular migration or irregular, we talk about irregular migration. But then migration can take place regular, but migrant can become irregular. So many people migrating safe and regular mode, but when they land up at the destination, due to some overstay or visa problem, they become, or changing of sponsor or kafala system, particularly in respect with Middle East, the regular migrant converts into irregular migrant. And therefore the distinction between the two, migration and migrant, is very important for policy point of view. So in that respect, I wanted to point out this thing. Now, Professor Rajan has said a lot about data. And I think data is an area where very frustrating. Migration research, I think, is area where we face a lot of frustration and we are not able to attract good students due to lack of data. In my institute, that is International Institute for Population Sciences, from where we publish National Family Health Survey, NFHS data, our good students are not attracted to migration research because there is a lot of data related with health. And then students go for health research or something like related with population, other aspects of population. So in that respect, I like to draw attention that the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation is also one of the important stakeholder. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation provided data in 2006-2007 in National Sample Survey, 64th round, household survey. I think household survey is also very important because it is through household survey we know about the characteristics of migrant. And when we want to see in which state of India people are emigrating, I think household survey can be very, very important along with characteristics. 64th round also told us that the rural people are more emigrating. International migration, labor migration is more from rural area than urban area and from agrarian class. And that we find that in Punjab or Gujarat or elsewhere, it is the rural, it is the agrarian, how international migration, emigration is related or entrenched in the agrarian structure. Now this type of research we are not able to do because Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation is not providing data after 2006-2007. So this is very important to bring them, to convince them so that the data can be also included of migration, internal and international. It was there in 64th round, which is very important part of the labor market. My third point is that we have to think of India or our Indian perspective in larger perspective of South Asia. Because in South Asia, other countries are also competing in labor market. So Nepal is rising, sending a lot of labor migrants, and the wages are getting depressed. Bangladesh is sending. So I think somewhere we can have some South Asian perspective to protect the migrant rights. And in that respect, we have certain efforts, like Colombo process is there, Abu Dhabi dialogue is there, but I think we have to bring the agenda of migration somewhere in SARC framework. SARC framework is very, very important, and in that respect, in our institute, we have a Department of Migration and Urban Studies where I teach and do research in the area of migration. We have also established South Asia Center for Labor Mobility and Migrants with support from ILO. Amish Karki is here. He was very instrumental and in supporting in the initiation of this center. So it is supported by ILO, IOM, and UN Women, and it is just last 6 months. It is 6 months old, and we are going to further develop it. What we are looking at that we have a lot of things to learn from our neighbor. So in the morning we were discussing about zero cost migration. Nepal has already implemented this zero cost migration, no cost migration. But Nepal is also facing, there are a lot of problems. So we are discussing with our colleagues, we are trying to know what is happening in Nepal. So this, I think, understanding from our neighbor is very important, and it can contribute towards strengthening or contributing to GCM.
I'm
So
sorry.
my last point.
Okay, thank you.
Last point that I like to remember, father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, we don't remember this thing, that how much migration, migrants' right, protection of migrants' right is important for India. Father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, went to South Africa at the age of 24 in 1893, and later on he fought for the rights of the indentured labor, migrants' right. And he lived there for 20 years, experimenting truth, non-violence, all tools of satyagraha, which was used in India's freedom. So this was the context I just wanted to bring. So migrants' right is not a small thing. It is a larger issue of labor rights. It's a larger issue of our human existence. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I think two valid points important for the report is one, of course, the harmonization of concepts and definitions. We do believe, and many of us have said this before, that we need to follow international standards, and this really needs a little bit more work, as you rightly pointed out, and more work at the regional level. I think that's where India could also make more efforts, and how to strengthen its position vis-à-vis the regional dialogue, as well as SARC as an example that you've given us. And of course, research and human rights issues are very important. So with that, I call my next speaker, Dr. Neha Wadhawan, who's going to speak from the podium, and she's from ILO.
Thank you, Dr. Sethi. Let me begin by saying, honorable representatives of the central government and state governments, the ICM, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here and be part of a very interesting consultation where I think there's been lots of food for thought and much to take away. I'm going to start my presentation. I'm sorry I have one. I know it's post-lunch, but I just thought this helps, given that we are in the hybrid mode, to talk a little bit about, is this in, it's not in slideshow mode. Could you please put that? Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly talk a little bit about the areas where I think we need to sort of draw attention to. There's been a lot of discussion on drawing from the experience of skilled migration, talking about the diaspora. So what I'm going to do today is try and talk a little bit about shifting the focus to some of the areas where we need to perhaps reflect upon more consciously. Now, the UN Global Compact on Safe and Orderly and Regular Migration recognizes the role of trade unions and employers in achieving these various objectives. And of course, in terms of representation by recruitment agencies, as mediators between employers and between workers is absolutely essential, right? I think it's also important to flag that promoting labor mobility and decent work are absolutely essential when we talk about fair recruitment practices and eventually, looking at decent working conditions. The third point I'd like to make here is about the reference and commitment to drawing upon ILO standards, principles, and guidelines for developing standard terms of employment in bilateral and regional labor mobility agreements. This is something that the GCM lays out very clearly. Now, for today's discussion, I think these are areas, and Dr. Sethi requested us to think about what could be the areas that we could work on in the future. I think these are some points that we would, we could discuss a little more. One would be on ensuring consular protection for migrant workers, including those exploited in the process of recruitment and due to the lack of decent working conditions at the destination. The second would be specific references to the protection of the rights of domestic workers, women workers. So workers at all skill levels, I think, need to be the foci of our discussion, right? Now, India is a signatory of Convention 111 on non-discrimination, and I think in light of this fact, it's important to think about marginalized workers as well as all other sectors, right, which do then garner attention. The third would be reviewing labor laws and work conditions to identify and address vulnerabilities of migrant workers at all skill levels. And I think this whole discussion on horizontal and vertical policy coherence is something that we have really seen effectively take place today, right? And finally, establishing non-discriminatory social protection systems, including social protection floors and mechanisms for access to and portability of social benefits to all workers. And Madam Udita did talk a little bit about this today already. Now, I am going to, in the interest of time, skip some of what I had decided to say, but quickly, just 6 points in terms of 6 objectives. And I'm starting in descending order because I think we've achieved a lot more in some of these objectives which I've tried to place before. Objective 21 talks about cooperation in facilitating safe and dignified return and readmission, as well as sustainable reintegration. We've heard about the social security agreements, Vande Bharat, Swadesh, ASEE maps. But I think it's important to think about digital literacy gaps that a lot of low-skilled workers would experience, right? So while these plans are fantastic, and I think these are absolutely commendable steps that have been taken by the government of India, will the most marginalized and vulnerable workers actually be left out of this process, and how do we safeguard that? Now, we also see that a lot of schemes and insurance policies apply to migrants who have been out of the country for at least 2 years. And we've seen in the case of the COVID pandemic that many of them who had to cut short their work experience, off or their contracts for 2 years in return, are now not eligible for some of these schemes. What happens in the case of returning domestic workers, right? How do you reintegrate them? I think this is really a question that remains to be answered by all of us. Objective 18 talks about investing in skill development and facilitating mutual recognition of skills, qualifications and competencies. And we've seen this discussion already. We're also seeing this work being taken forward by the Goals Project and the EU CAMP project. But what I would again like to flag here, also in terms of looking at new labor markets and exploring new destinations, which are beneficial for migrant workers. But how do we count experience? And how do we document that? And how do we place our workers in terms of experienced workers, right? Objective 16 talks about empowering migrants and societies to realize full inclusion and social cohesion. We've seen the fantastic, creation of this mother portal, which I think has really been phenomenal. But I think it is really important to think about increased support for labor rights violations to migrant workers in the destination. And to do so, promoting freedom of association and ratifying C87, ratifying C98 on collective bargaining is absolutely essential, right? The importance of language training is also something that has been brought up, and I'd just like to, share an anecdote that a worker told me, a domestic worker told me. She said that, she said for 3 months I wasn't being paid when I reached my destination. And I asked her, I said, why didn't you ask for your wages? She said, I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to communicate to my employer and ask for those wages in a polite way, right? So I think these are really areas of concern which we must think about in a much more effective manner. And then my last slide and last 3 points, Objective 6 talks about facilitating fair and ethical recruitment and safeguarding conditions that ensure decent work. We of course have the ILO's general principles and operational guidelines on fair recruitment. Amish spoke about zero recruitment costs as being an ideal. However, I think it's important to recognize that there are gender differences in recruitment costs and processes, right? A lot of domestic workers now, earlier they used to be charged a lot of money, but now report that they're not being expected to pay for recruitment costs, right? Because the employers are paying them. This also then points to the supply and demand aspects of what is the demand for and what are we sending, right? And which is why perhaps there is this situation where making legal recruitment opportunities available at source becomes really important. And I think, the POE from Patna was also talking about this, that unless legal recruitment options reach source locations, it's really difficult to talk about zero recruitment costs. Objective 5 talks about enhancing availability and flexibility of pathways for regular migration. And I think the removal of ECR, ECNR distinctions are very welcome. I mean, this has been echoed in the discussion today, and I think this is really the way forward. However, we must also think about how removing gender-biased restrictions, are needed. And instead, we need to really emphasize on decent working conditions. So again, to share the example of this limit on, the age, under 30 women can't migrate for domestic work. But we know this, that a lot of women, or the unscrupulous agents that sometimes help them, actually encourage these women to report their age as higher, right, when these passports are made. So really the usefulness of these bans or restrictions, how effective they are, and perhaps this really then limits us in being able to access authentic data on the numbers of women that are actually migrating, right? The last one, which is minimize the adverse drivers and structural factors that compel people to leave their country of origin. And this is again trying to draw your attention on the question of supply versus demand. There is a huge supply of workers from India. The demand, however, wavers, right? From skill levels to occupational sets, we see lots of differences. And I think looking at emerging labor markets, but also existing labor markets, and how we can maximize our potential in these contexts is really important. The PDOT has also come up in our discussions today. But I'd like to report some findings, based on the Work and Freedom program that I'm associated with, which has seen a more effective approach in utilizing pre-migration orientations, right? Because the PDOT is when a worker has already signed up to migrate and paid the money possibly to a recruitment agent. So how useful a PDOT is really at that juncture, right? Just before the migrant is taking off. It has its uses, but I think the idea would be to perhaps combine passport issuance with a gentle nudge towards explaining the risks and the opportunities of migration. And I think we really need to think about creative ways of looking at distress-driven migration here. There need to be schemes to integrate vulnerable sections. And again, coming in from the perspective of domestic workers, one can see that widowed, abandoned, separated women, right, do get channelized into this exploitation as domestic workers. So why is it that our society does not give space to certain vulnerable sections, and they have to resort to migration as a way to survive? And it's therefore important for us to really think, creatively about how we integrate possibly the most vulnerable sections in a way that they are not pushed to migrate under distressful conditions. And I think the COVID experience has really, I think, given us very interesting insights on how sources and destinations can respond to the crisis. I think we discussed several cases here. It was really heartening to hear what internal migration experiences have also been, but I think the idea should be to link these learnings from the internal migration crisis that we have taken and try and see how we can operate or operationalize some of these learnings in the destination and as a source and as a transit point. Thank you, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Neha. I think that was a very good recap of what has been said this morning and in the context of all the 6 objectives. And thank you for flagging the point about marginalized, vulnerable populations and the different segments which should not be left behind, including domestic workers and gender issues when it comes to women. So thank you for that. And let me now call on our next speaker. We are at 3:50 p.m. right now. So should I reduce your time to 5 minutes each? We have time to 4. Okay. So you have 7 minutes. Thank you to Surbhi. So we have now Dr. Anjali Borhade, the founder president of Disha Foundation, and who will also bring you another perspective of local communities. So over to you.
Sure, thank you. Karthikeya, can you please put on my slides? Yeah. So, good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to speak a little bit about our work directly with the migrant workers, though it's with the domestic workers, but I hope it will bring some insights how these learnings can be collaborated for the welfare of international workers. Sorry.
Yeah,
This is forward, right? Yeah.
No,
it's back.
This one.
That.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. So Disha Foundation is an NGO and we're working since last 20 years. Started our work from Nasik, Maharashtra. Now scaled up this work within 10 districts of Maharashtra along with NCR, Delhi and Goa state. We piloted and scaled up our one-stop solution, migration support centers to cater migrants' different needs, including livelihood, legal support, health, and social protection. We are also declared as National Center of Excellence in Migration, Health and Development by Ministry of Tribal Affairs. And recently we also contributed to Niti Ayog's the first ever migration policy draft during the COVID crisis. So the key measures taken by our organization for the welfare of migrants and basically our stand is migration is inevitable and it should be facilitated for more safer and more productive migration. It should not be restricted. So we have direct interventions with migrants to create awareness about the informed migration choices, facilitate their access to different services through our physical centers as well as the virtual support. During COVID times, we also initiated a mobile app for migrant workers called Shram Gaurav, and we have also created WhatsApp networks groups among the migrants who have that privilege to have smartphones. We work with the governments and different government departments basically to bring the multi-stakeholder partnership to cater to the migrants' different needs. I will speak about these partnerships in my later slides. And we also work very closely for the development of leadership among the migrant workers. So especially during COVID times, our initiative for workers was raising awareness, but beside awareness raising, we also initiated the on-site COVID vaccination for different work sites of migrant workers in collaboration with the urban health centers, and we could vaccinate around 75,000 workers across three states. We have very regular healthcare awareness session as well as the service providing sessions in collaboration with the local health authorities. We have also developed a referral bank with different health services of the government. For the social protection as well as the financial literacy and inclusion, we conduct very regular awareness programs. We have developed our in-house eligibility check software to check for which government schemes the migrant worker can be eligible, and accordingly we provide end-to-end handhold support to register that worker into the social security schemes. Similarly, we also facilitate bank account opening support for the migrant workers. But besides that, as a first step, we generate the financial literacy and personal financial counseling for the migrant workers for better manage their financial services. Very lately, we just as a recognition of the contribution for the migrants and especially the peers among migrants, we hosted our first ever Shram Gaurav Award for the Shramik Mitras on the occasion of 1st May, that is International Labour Day. So far, we have reached around 6 lakh migrant workers through different services in these 3 states. I'll not go in detail since I have very limited time. So this is just a snapshot of our mobile app, and it has a very brief video about the app. So I'll not go in detail. So this app is being piloted in 2 locations at the moment. We have 1,000 plus downloads, and we are getting very good response from the workers, and this will be scaled up to other cities very soon. We have collaboration with various stakeholders to address the migrant workers' needs. So we work directly with the employers for various sectors, including CREDAI and Builder Association for construction, hotel associations, fishery cooperatives. We work in Goa on a very large scale, resident welfare associations for domestic workers, and various workers' unions. We work with local, state, and district, and even national level NGOs, and also with the research organizations and universities, both state, national, and international. We have collaboration with different government departments, again at state and the national level. So this is just a list of the departments for women and child welfare. We work for the ICDS benefits to migrants. For public distribution system, now we work on the One Nation, One Ration card entitlement, how it can be reached to maximum workers. For health and family welfare, we try to include migrant workers into National Urban Health Mission. Labor Department, we work on multiple levels, right from e-Shram, enrollment, Interstate Migrant Workers Act, and different welfare boards which are meant for different category of workers. For the skill development corporations, we work with their training partners. We don't work directly for the skill development. We have developed a bank of various training partners, and we match the interest and the experience of the worker, and we refer to these skill development agencies. And we also provide handhold support, end-to-end support, so that worker shouldn't be dropped out from the ongoing training, and he should complete the training successfully. We work with State Legal Service Authority. We have set up our own legal sales support unit where we facilitate various legal cases by the workers. So on an average, every year we recover, especially from the wage theft cases, we recover between 30 to 50 lakh rupees through the from the contractors. We work with housing and urban affairs, especially for the extension of their city livelihood center and the existing shelters for the homeless population. And for the education department, we work to develop a mechanism to include the migrant workers into mainstream education. So we have very special collaboration for the migrants during COVID, but it also needs to be expanded beyond these two themes, and we need to have a sustainable mechanism of funding for this cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm the last speaker, so that is a sort of advantage and disadvantage for me to extend the time or limit the time. That is in my control now, it seems to be. Please, next. I will try to limit myself on the recommendation part. So please, I'm a part of International Organization for Migration, which is working for almost more than 70 years. Next, please. Oh, sorry. We are working in almost 172 countries with membership in societies, states, government, and international community. IAM's role in India is on strengthening the migration management of the country. We are the focused organization working specifically on the migration issues, providing safe and orderly and human return and reintegration to migrants who are unwilling or unable to remain in host countries, economic rehabilitation and reintegration of survivors of trafficking and vulnerable individuals and other migrants. We focus on fostering ethical recruitment and fair labor practices by businesses, and that is also another niche area of IUM. Strengthening sectoral and multi-stakeholder collaboration to prevent and mitigate risk of exploitation, slavery, and trafficking, contributing to the effort of central and state governments on PDO in coordination with the Ministry of External Affairs, skill training for migrants, empirical research on migration issues. That is another area on which we have been talking throughout the day today. That's in need of the hour at this moment, and promoting multi-stakeholder dialogues on migration issues. Target beneficiaries are potential migrants, migrant workers in employment, returned migrants as well as victims of trafficking, and members of the migrants' family and communities. Coming back to GCM issue, just thought to bring these three major points just to bring upon all those main factors. Benchmark and regular review of progress in implementing GCM, actionable commitments to identify achievements, barriers, and priorities for action. These are the following key elements of GCM. Capacity building measures in line with identified priorities, ongoing broad-based dialogue to continue forging consensus on outstanding issues and address emerging challenges. So if you see on those three priority areas and what the government of India has done till now, although there are different objectives, but focusing on a couple of them is objective 1, collect and utilize accurate and disaggregated data as a basis of evidence-based policies, on which government of India has already taken initiative through e-migrate system, collaborative initiative with IUM. Also, we are having a project at this moment with the ministry, strengthening data-informed and migrant-centered migration management framework in India. Objective 3, it says provide accurate and timely information at all stages of migration, on which the pre-departure orientation training is the main element. Objective 5 says enhance availability and flexibility of pathways for regular migration, on which the government of India signed various labor mobility partnership agreement with key destination countries for the welfare of domestic workers. There are various examples cited here: Denmark, France. A technical support project was implemented under the aegis of the joint declaration of the Indo-EU Common Agenda on Migration and Mobility. So these are some of the examples which are some of the initiative from Government of India. Objective 6, facilitate fair and ethical recruitment and safeguard conditions that ensure decent work Through e-migrate, steps have been taken to ban unscrupulous recruitment agents and new regulation to expand the net. So I'm not saying that everything has already been done. There is a lot to be done, required to be done, but some of the initiatives the Government of India has already taken that needs to be applauded at the same time. Objective 14, enhance consular protection, assistance and cooperation throughout the migration cycle. In accordance with the GCM, enhanced consular protection, assistance and cooperation at all stages of the migration cycle have been adopted. Indian missions abroad play a key role in collating all the information of migrant workers seeking to return home and were pivotal in the largest repatriation operation through the Vande Bharat mission. Then objective 15, provide access to basic services to migrants. Indian Community Welfare Fund, Pravasi Bharatiya Bima Yojana, Madad Portal. We heard about all these things throughout the day today. Objective 18, invest in skills development and facilitate mutual recognition of skills, qualification and competencies. Whereas we are having India International Skill Centers, mobility agreement with cooperation on skills. So what we have done as part of IOM to ensure safe, orderly and regular migration, we try to work on foster synergies and exchanges, share information, experiences and good practices on a range of migration topic. We organized a global diaspora summit to set out a future agenda of action for global diaspora engagement. We believe that it is highly required to bring different stakeholders at one platform and start engaging them for different dialogues to find out evidences and also find out solutions at the same time. It can't be said that it is a responsibility of one stakeholders. Different stakeholders have their different skills and it is highly required to bring them at one place to use their skills, and then only we can find out the way out to address the problem of migration. Contribute to improve policy coherence at the national and regional levels and promote convergence in migration policy in different regions. We have been contributing and being part of different government initiatives. At the national level, Government of India, specifically Niti Aayog, came up with a sort of a draft policy for the migrant workers, which I think they are trying to finalize it with inputs from different states and different stakeholders. But the need of the hour is because that is focusing on the internal migrant, how we can bring the issue in that particular thing for the international migrants who are returning back to India and trying to be reintegrate in the society and the community. So that sort of link we need to find out how we can do. Partner to the ICM and the Global Migration Data Analysis Center to work on strengthening data-informed and migrant-centered migration management framework in India. So that is one of the work we have taken responsibility, and we're trying to contribute to improving access to labor migration opportunities for aspiring Indian migrants through strengthening migration management frameworks, which earlier Professor Rajan was raising on the issue of migration management and data specifically. We have developed a digital platform called the Workers Joint in Rajasthan, created with the objective of leveraging already existing technology to connect businesses and migrant workers and facilitate professional interaction between them. So one way it is trying to bring those migrant workers who are looking for jobs, and then at the same time encouraging businesses to register to provide opportunities to those migrant workers. So it's a win-win situation for both of them, and we are trying to engage both two ends through Workers Joint in Rajasthan. We developed training modules for garment industries to train people working on the management level in the industry. So it is also required to sensitize those management in the factories and businesses as well, because it is their engagement is highly required to engage and helping in create a safer environment for migrant workers at the workplace at the same time. We also worked on a different migration support center with the objective to help cater to the needs of the migrant workers and facilitate support for accommodation and other services which is highly required. We came up with a recruitment guidebook for ethical direct recruitment of interstate migrants in the garment industry in India, with the aim to provide practical operational guidance to employers in ensuring direct ethical recruitment. And we have a global initiative, a global tool called IRIS Standard. at the same time. I'm not going into the detail of those, but that is one of the tool being developed by IOM to support on ethical recruitment processes. We conducted a COVID-19 vaccination study to understand the availability, accessibility, and hesitancy amongst the migrant in relation to COVID-19 vaccine with the support of UNFPA. And recently there is another study going on at the South Asian level in which other UN agencies are being part of. What I know, IOM has taken the initiative, and UNICEF and UN Women, and I think there's another organization who is being part of that one, where we are trying to find out on the impact of vaccination for the migrant workers. We developed a PDO, PU, and PO training module, and MeGap is one of that, another tool in response to migrants by providing a one-stop shop platform of relevant and up-to-date information. This MeGap enables migrants to make informed decisions throughout their migration process. The MeGap is IOM's downloadable app, which serves as a one-stop shop platform where migrants can access current, reliable, and practical information, and IOM services can also be find out. And that is globally being run, and we are trying to bring this tool also in Indian context. Yeah, just coming to stakeholders, obviously working with everyone. So these are some of those which we thought just to, we need to find out priority. Develop a national plan of action aligning with the relevant goals and targets of in SDGs. Other in international agenda points, SEDI framework for disaster risk mitigation, new urban agenda, Paris climate change agreements. So that sort of national plan of action is highly required. Inform issue specific themes to dedicated work streams, relevant agencies and stakeholders for robust action. An inclusive forum where a need of the hour is to invite people from different stakeholders, forum and partners to have their points to be included in the plan, and to support the government in evaluating progress and tailor intervention accordingly. Then again, evidence-based of good practices is highly required. Promoting a state-led migration consultation process. Sometimes we remain focused at the national level, whereas we need to reach to those state missionary at the same time to bring them also on the table, and devising mechanism to strengthen PDO, PO, and PO, and grievance redressal mechanism for addressing migration-specific issues and concern that needs to be strengthened.
I think we have reached the end of our session.
Yes, that's a challenge. That's why I am coming to the challenge now. So this is the last mile for support due to distance and remoteness, and then coordinating with different agencies. As I started with my my session, that is really a challenging task to bring everyone on board to work together. We always think that is a responsibility to the government, but to address or to find out solution, it is highly required that everyone should come at one place and try to find out a single solution to address the problem. So thank you very much, and over from my side.
I think we really have to give you a nice clap here. Thank you very much, and that was very interesting for all of us, but I'm sorry we've really reached the end of our session. It's 4:15 exact. I have to take back my offer of giving you that 1 minute extra, but I felt if Professor Khadria wanted to say anything, or shall we just call on Surbi to do the vote of thanks, Professor?
Yes, of course, not even a minute, but I wish that Surbi, and I congratulate for taking this initiative where so much of resources have been shared, and I'm sure this is going to, strengthen her armory for taking India's delegation, represent India's case at the IMRF. And certainly there would be life beyond IMRF, and I think we are all geared towards that. So all the best, and thank you, Meera.
Thank you very much. And yes, we are also looking forward to a big delegation going to New York in a very short time. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panelists, and maybe over to you.